Hey guys, tonight we're going to take a stroll down cobbled roads that haven't echoed with footsteps in almost 2,000 years. The stars are dim above ancient rooftops, and the air carries a strange but oddly comforting blend of baked bread, olive oil, and something a bit more sewer adjacent. Welcome to Rome. Not the postcard version, but the one that hums under your sandals, warm and alive with the murmur of water beneath your feet. You're standing in a city where toilets were shared, plumbing was revolutionary, and public baths were as common as cafes today. And yes, they had indoor plumbing before many of our ancestors even figured out the joy of a roof that didn't leak. But be warned, if you had to live here with the plumbing and the smells, you'd probably last 15 minutes, especially once you find out what they used instead of toilet paper. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below telling me where in the world and what time it is as you're listening tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin your slow walk through the dim alleys of ancient Rome. The stones under your feet are uneven, polished from centuries of sandals and carts, echoing with the whispers of time. You smell yeast from a nearby bakery, flatbread, perhaps, and then, just as suddenly, something less delicious. It's a reminder, Rome was brilliant, but Rome was also fragrant. To your left, an alley reveals a long drainage trench, barely covered, a slow trickle of water running through it. That's no accident. It's part of a network, a web of channels, hidden and exposed, redirecting everything from bathwater to, well, less noble substances, down toward the great Cloaca Maxima. And yes, that's its real name. The greatest sewer. Who said the Romans weren't dramatic? You step aside as a woman pours a bucket of water into the street from her second-floor window. No warning, no heads up, just gravity. The water hits the stone and joins a shallow channel that curves along the curb. You follow it, because that's what you do in Rome. Follow the water. It always leads somewhere interesting. Passing a small square, you pause. There's a fountain shaped like a lion's head, water dribbling from its mouth. Children gather with clay cups, catching the cool trickle. The water is clean, so clean that it traveled for miles via aqueducts, all thanks to an empire obsessed with two things: conquering and staying just clean enough to avoid total disaster. The Romans didn't invent plumbing outright, but they certainly perfected it. Aqueducts, those towering marvels of arches, carried water across vast distances using nothing but gravity and brilliance. No pumps, no motors, just stone, slope, and math. Some of them are still standing. Your apartment complex can't even keep hot water running for a week. But here's a twist. Many scholars still debate who really built the first proper Roman plumbing system. Was it the Etruscans, those mysterious neighbors with a flair for engineering? Or did the Romans take credit, as they often did, for perfecting and scaling the system to absurd proportions? Historians argue about this over conferences and espresso shots to this day. As you keep walking, the sun begins to dip in your imagination's sky. Shadows stretch long across the forum, where statues of gods now wear pigeon hats. You see a column with inscriptions about water rights. Yes, even in ancient times, people fought over who got the good water. Some things never change. You feel the soft, almost musical gurgle under your feet. Pipes. Not just any pipes, lead ones. Miles of them, curled beneath Rome like veins under skin. And right now, one of them is carrying water from a spring miles away to a bathhouse you'll visit later. It's amazing, it's horrifying, it's Roman. And just when you think you've seen enough for one night, You catch the scent of something roasted, maybe lamb, maybe mystery meat, and decide to follow it. The Romans, after all, weren't only brilliant with plumbing, they were excellent at feasting, gossiping, and figuring out where to build their toilets so you could relieve yourself and still hear the latest scandal. You pass a row of doorways, each leading into homes where indoor plumbing was a luxury for some and a nuisance for others. Ever smelled a backed-up drain with no bleach to save you? That's tomorrow's problem. For now, you let your steps slow. You listen. The night settles around you like a heavy cloak. Rome is vast, complex, and alive, even in the dead of night. The stones remember every sandal, every spilled goblet of wine, every child giggling as they chased each other around the bathhouse pools. And you're just beginning to scratch the surface of this marble-covered mess of brilliance. Now, let's see where the water takes us next. You follow the gentle slope of the road, and it takes you downhill, not by chance, of course. Roman engineers loved gravity like a poet loves metaphors. The entire city was designed to move water with elegance. From distant mountain springs, down into the aqueducts, through lead and clay pipes, and eventually into the streets, fountains, homes, and public latrines. It's like a spa day designed by someone who also enjoys spreadsheets. Your sandals click softly as you approach a stone structure rising above the skyline. It's not a temple, though it has columns worthy of one. It's an aqueduct, a literal highway for water. The Aqua Claudia, maybe, or Aqua Marcia. They all had names, these rivers of civilization, and personalities too. Some ran clear and cold, others warm and mineral-rich. Romans even ranked them. No joke, they had favorite aqueducts. Imagine Yelp reviews for water. You find yourself craning your neck, watching as birds perch atop the arches, unaware that centuries ago, these very channels gushed with life. Over 300 million gallons of water poured into Rome daily at its peak. That's enough to bathe every resident, fill every fountain, clean every toga, twice. And they didn't even charge extra for sparkling. And how did they do it? With genius and limestone. The aqueducts were built with a precise gradient, about 1 inch every 100 feet. Too steep, and the water would crash and erode. Too flat, and it would stagnate. Romans weren't messing around. They measured slopes like your aunt measures flour, very seriously. But don't be fooled. The water didn't always stay in the sky. A lot of it ran underground in covered channels or vaulted. Tunnels, Rome. Beneath your feet is a maze of stone arteries. You wouldn't want to get lost down there, not just because of rats or ghosts or whatever haunted the old sewers, but because the Romans didn't bother to label anything. No exit signs, just darkness and the occasional trickle of regret. As you walk beneath one of the arches, you notice something carved into the stone. SPQR, the symbol of the Roman Republic. It's everywhere in this city, on manhole covers, military banners, even some suspiciously smug-looking public toilets. It meant the Senate and the people of Rome, but it might as well mean we take our plumbing very seriously. You trail a thin stream of water flowing alongside the road. It's cool, clean, and surprisingly fast. It's part of a diverted channel for washing the streets. Romans hated dust. They didn't love mud either. Their solution: flood the streets occasionally and sweep everything down into the drains, like a weekly rinse cycle for your city. Eventually, you reach a small basin surrounded by pillars, a nymphaeum. Not just a fountain, this is water as performance art. Statues of nymphs, gods, dolphins, and one suspiciously smug triton spout water into a pool. A local boy splashes his face while an older man fills a jug, muttering about how the water used to be colder. the more things change. And here's the part they don't teach in school. Rome had water inspectors, a quarry whose job was to monitor flow, fix blockages, and bust people illegally tapping into the pipes. Yes, water crime was a thing. Some rich folks even bribed workers to redirect entire water lines to their private baths. It's like hacking your neighbor's Wi-Fi, but wetter and with more togas. One scholar once claimed that there were at least 9 major aqueducts feeding the city at once, each with different endpoints and purposes. Some served fountains, others bathhouses, others latrines. Still others went directly into wealthy homes, complete with bronze taps and personal fountains. And yet, even with all that engineering, people still complained about water pressure. You pause to touch a bit of the aqueduct stone. It's cool and rough, worn down by centuries of wind and rain, and maybe the occasional pigeon tragedy. You imagine the builders, slaves, soldiers, engineers, hauling rock, calculating angles, carving tunnels through hills. Some of them probably had no idea the water would keep flowing long after the empire crumbled. And scholars still argue about it. Who deserved credit for specific innovations? Did the idea of water basins in temples come from the Greeks? Were underground channels an Etruscan idea? The truth is probably tangled, like most history. Everyone borrowed, improved, and claimed they'd done it all along. Suddenly, you hear laughter. Children race past with clay cups, splashing each other with water from a spigot hidden in a lion's mouth. It's refreshing, simple, joyful. In a city of emperors, soldiers, philosophers, and schemers, water was the great equalizer. It flowed for the rich, yes, but also for the vendors, the bakers, the children who just wanted to cool off on a hot day. The sky above darkens a little, more, turning a richer shade of plum. You feel the shift in the wind, the scent of dust mixing with cypress. In the distance, you hear a bell, maybe a temple closing, maybe someone announcing a lost goat. Rome is always halfway between divine and ridiculous. You lean back against a pillar and let the world soften. The aqueduct arches stretch like ribs overhead, holding up the night. Somewhere, water is still moving, still humming its way through pipes and tunnels laid by men long forgotten. And now, your feet carry you, forward again, toward the next trickle in this long, flowing story. The air turns warmer as you follow the water toward the heart of Roman relaxation. The thermae, the public baths. At first, it's hard to tell if you're approaching a temple or a palace. The building looms ahead, columns soaring, mosaics glittering. In the twilight, steam drifting lazily from the roof like a sigh. But no, this isn't for worship or for royalty. It's for everyone. Well, almost everyone. You step into the apoditerium, the changing room, where marble benches line the walls and carved cubbies hold neatly folded tunics. A boy offers you a bit of oil and a bronze strigil, a curved scraping tool. You've never really exfoliated until you've scraped yourself clean like a boiled carrot. The air is thick with the mingled scents of lavender oil, human sweat, damp, stone, and possibly someone's lost sandal. You're not entirely sure. Your feet slap softly against the warm floor as you pass through the series of rooms. The tepidarium, pleasantly warm. The caldarium, stifling and steamy. The frigidarium, shockingly cold. It's a temperature roller coaster, and your pores have never been more confused. Voices bounce off the tiled walls. Laughter, debates, whispered gossip. The baths are where Rome comes to unwind and to eavesdrop. You overhear someone discussing a senator's rumored affair with his wine merchant's daughter. Another man rants about plumbing taxes being too high, while his friend nods and fans himself with a sponge. It's basically Twitter, but with more nudity and less spelling. Someone passes you a cup of Mulsum, spiced wine with honey, and you sip as you soak. The water, heated by underground furnaces called hypocausts, is kept at just the right temperature thanks to clever engineering. Slaves stoke fires beneath the floors, and hot air circulates under the tiles and through flues in the walls. It's essentially central heating, only powered by human misery. And yet, it works. The floors are warm, the rooms are cozy, even the walls sweat. You watch as a man rises from the water, stretches, and uses a strigil to scrape his back. The oily mixture slides off, taking a layer of city grime with it. Clean in ancient Rome was a process. It wasn't about soap bubbles and loofahs. It was about ritual, about flow. And let's be honest, a healthy dose of showing off your calves. Over in a corner, a group of poets is discussing the ideal metaphor for water. One says it's like fate, always moving, always reshaping. Another insists it's more like a mirror. A third just wants more wine. You quietly agree with the third. And yet among all the soaking and the steam, you notice a strange contradiction. Romans built these marvels of comfort, these temples of cleanliness. And yet, sometimes, they reused bath water. Yep, the water wasn't changed every day. It wasn't even filtered. Some bathhouses tried, using settling tanks and clever drains, but often it just swirled around, a communal soup of effort and body odor. Still, there's something soothing about it all. The rhythm, the routine. The water, however imperfect, became a pause button on life. Senators soaked next to slaves. Philosophers debated next to bakers. And everyone left pruned, and at least by Roman standards, refreshed. One small, curious corner of the bathhouse catches your attention. A narrow hallway with a quiet sign. Latrina. Ah yes, the Roman restroom. And you are not ready. You wander in and blink. Stone benches line the walls with perfectly round holes carved at regular intervals. There are no doors, no stalls, no privacy. Just you, your neighbors, and an open invitation to conversation. The Romans, it seems, were very social even while doing their most private business. You could make a friend or finalize a contract right there over the shared sponge on a stick. Hygienic? Debatable. Efficient? Absolutely. And yes, you heard that right. The Romans didn't use toilet paper. They used a tersorium, a communal sponge attached to a stick, dipped in vinegar water between uses. It's the stuff of nightmares, or very niche spa treatments. The true miracle is that anyone lived past 30. You back slowly out of the latrina, trying not to breathe too deeply, and return to the warmth of the baths. A musician in the corner strums a cithara, plucking a tune that dances on the surface of the water. The melody is soft, drifting, as if even sound has learned how to relax. Historians still debate whether the baths were more about health or about control, keeping the masses clean, content, and somewhat distracted. After all, an Auro empire runs more smoothly when its citizens are clean, buzzed on cheap wine, and too relaxed to riot. Maybe the plumbing wasn't just about water. Maybe it was about peace. You lean your head back, letting steam bead along your temples, and close your eyes for a moment. The baths are fading into the evening. The fire beneath the floors is growing low. Even Rome has to sleep sometime. But the water never stops. It flows behind the walls, beneath the tiles, through the channels, constant, gentle, carrying secrets from the mouths of senators and the backs of poets, trickling ever onward. And so do you. Rising now, towel draped over your shoulder, you head out into the Roman dusk, toward the next mystery in marble and mist. You step out of the bathhouse with skin soft as overripe fruit and a nose still full of steam. The cool evening air hits you like a whisper, and your feet carry you past a row of columns, down another winding alley. You hear faint voices again, not from a market or a dinner party, but from one of the most curious places in all of Rome, the public toilets. Yes, you're going in. Brace yourself. The latrina is wide open to the street because Romans weren't big on shame when it came to bodily functions. You duck under a low archway and find a row of marble benches along the wall, each with a circular hole carved neatly in the top. Below, a shallow stream flows gently to carry away waste. It's all surprisingly elegant for a place where people did their business in groups. You sit, not literally, of course. You hover emotionally, next to two men deep in conversation. One's discussing olive oil taxes. The other is more concerned about his neighbor's pet monkey stealing grapes. Neither is fazed by the smell or the setup. This is routine. This is Rome. And yes, as you may recall from earlier, there's the tersorium again. That sponge on a stick that you now notice resting in a vinegar-filled trough, passed between users. No one looks disgusted. They look familiar. Maybe a bit resigned, like someone standing in line at a DMV that happens to be incredibly moist. You might ask, why no privacy? Why design a place where people relieve themselves shoulder to shoulder? Some historians suggest it was practical. Others think it was social. Romans believed that shared routines made for shared identity. Still others argue it was simply efficient. Fewer walls, fewer maintenance problems, fewer places for teenagers to graffiti things. And graffiti, oh yes, you see some. Scratched into the walls are little Latin poems, crude jokes, and the occasional very questionable drawing. Turns out, the human impulse to write "Gaius was here" while doing your business transcends millennia. A historian once wrote that the Romans didn't just tolerate bodily functions, they integrated them. Plumbing wasn't a background utility. It was a public performance. The sound of flowing water was more than ambience. It was policy. But not everything is quite so sophisticated. You peer beneath the bench and spot a fat rat dashing along the channel. You recoil slightly, and the man next to you chuckles. They say that's the spirit of Tiberius, he jokes. You're not sure whether to laugh or offer the rat a toga. And yet, there's an odd piece here. It's honest, no pretense. Just humans, functioning. The water flows. The air circulates. A small boy outside is sweeping the walkway, whistling a tune that probably hasn't been heard since Caesar had hair. From time to time, someone pours a bucket of water into the toilet system from a nearby basin. This triggers a small flush, gravity-powered. Of course, it works surprisingly well. These benches have seen emperors and fishmongers alike. There's something strangely democratic about a marble toilet. You wonder how long this setup has been in place. Decades? Centuries? Some latrines, archaeologists say, were repaired and reused for generations. Pipes would be patched with clay, troughs cleaned with brushes made of reeds. The sponge sticks? Replaced when they started to smell like defeat. And here's a strange fact. Some historians think these communal latrines might have served a religious function too. The Romans believed in spirits that inhabited places, lairs, mains, even sewer spirits. There were prayers for safe passage through the underworld of the plumbing system. Sacrifices even. One scholar speculates that a priest once tried to bless the sewers. The results were mixed. You exit the latrine with a new respect for Roman pragmatism. There's something impressive about a people who engineered comfort into discomfort, who turned waste into ritual, who didn't just invent toilets, they made them stylish. And outside, the water keeps moving. You find yourself walking alongside a drainage channel that runs through the marketplace. Vendors are packing up for the night. A woman washes her vegetables in a trickle of aqueduct water, humming softly. A child drops a coin into a street-side fountain and makes a wish. You wonder if it's the same coin you saw someone throw in an hour ago. Roman plumbing, it turns out, is a bit of a loop, and scholars still puzzle over the full extent of these systems. How many miles of pipe? How many gallons per day? Did the water gods ever unionize? No one agrees. What we do know is that when Rome fell, so too did the sound of constant running water in the streets. Silence, it turns out, is a terrible plumber. You pause by a drinking fountain shaped like a lion's mouth. The water gurgles out in a thin stream, cool and clean. You take a sip, not too fast. The Romans would swirl it first, the way one might, savor wine or judge a bath temperature. Even hydration was a kind of ritual. The stars are now fully out. Above, the aqueduct arches cut silhouettes against the night sky. Below, the water continues its quiet work, carrying, cleansing, calming. You walk on, past the flicker of torches and the low murmur of late-night conversation. Rome is not asleep. Not really. It's just quieter. The kind of quiet that lets you hear things clearly, like your footsteps, or the gurgle of a pipe, or the soft laughter of two men finishing a conversation over a shared sponge. And somewhere, beneath your feet, another stream flows. Not wine, not olive oil, just water. Always water. Your feet are taking you deeper now, down a narrow side street, paved in time-smooth stone, where the buildings huddle close like old friends whispering secrets. The light is dim here, flickering from a few oil lamps hung above doorways, their flames dancing softly against the plaster walls. And beneath all of it, as ever, you can hear the quiet hum of water. It's easy to forget, in all the steam and marble and gossip, that plumbing in Rome wasn't just about luxury. It was survival, especially when it came to waste. And tonight, you're about to meet the unsung hero of that entire operation, the Cloaca Maxima, the Great Drain. It doesn't sound glamorous. That's because it isn't. But if you want to understand how Rome stayed standing while other cities choked on their own filth, this is where you go. You turn a corner, and there it is. An archway, low and wide, carved into the hillside, gaping like the mouth of some ancient beast. And in a way, it is. The Cloaca Maxima began as a natural stream, but the Romans, being Romans, decided to tame it. Cover it, expand it, use it to swallow the city's worst offerings without complaint. You step closer. The stench isn't as bad as you'd expect, though there's a whiff of something earthy, metallic, and maybe goat-like. The stream inside still runs, slowly but surely. Its water is dark, but not stagnant. It moves, and that's the key. Movement is everything in Roman engineering. They built the Cloaca Maxima using heavy stone blocks, some of them older than the Republic itself. Over the centuries, they reinforced it with concrete, brick, anything they had on hand. It wasn't just a sewer. It was a monument to control. Control over nature, over disease, over the daily chaos of urban life. And yet, it wasn't just for filth. Strange, isn't it? The drain sometimes served ceremonial purposes. Livy, the Roman historian, once mentioned that sacred objects were thrown into the cloaca during rituals. A place meant to carry refuse also carried meaning. It was a portal, not just to the Tiber River, but maybe in a more poetic sense, to the underworld. A place where what was hidden still mattered. You walk along its edge, careful not to slip. The stones here are slick and old, with worn grooves from generations of sandals and cartwheels. At some point, the cloaca was so large and important that Roman priests held ceremonies to bless it. Imagine holy men chanting above a sewer, only in Rome. Some scholars argue the sewer's function extended beyond mere sanitation. It was a statement of order, of power. And sure, maybe that's reading too much into a glorified ditch, but the fact that it still works today says something. Modern cities can barely manage potholes. Rome managed poop with elegance. There's an eerie beauty to it, really. The sound of water rushing through darkness, bouncing off centuries-old walls. A sort of underground lullaby. You begin to wonder what else might be down there. Jewels accidentally dropped, messages washed away, rats plotting tiny coups. You hear a splash, you freeze. It's probably just a toad, or a shoe, or maybe one of the sewer gods making their nightly rounds. There were many of them, you know. The Romans had a deity for nearly everything, including drains. One was Cloacina, goddess of the sewers. She even had a shrine near the forum. It was modest, but well respected. You didn't want to upset the sewer gods. That's just asking for backflow. And this is where the historians begin to argue again. Some say the Cloaca Maxima was purely practical. Others insist it was spiritual, a manifestation of Rome's constant struggle between civitas and chaos, between a city that liked clean forums and a world that liked making messes. You pause near a grate where water still pours in from a side channel. Someone tosses in flower petals. Maybe a ritual, maybe just a romantic gesture gone wrong. They swirl for a moment, then vanish, lost to time, like so much else down there. The thought hits you. Beneath all the elegance of Rome, its temples, its triumphs, its gossip-filled baths, there's always this system, silently working, unseen, unthanked, but vital. You back away from the entrance and return to the street. The lamps flicker behind you, casting long shadows across the walls. You think of the phrase carved above one sewer outlet, Nec sine aquis urbs. A city is not a city without water. True, but you're starting to think a city isn't really a city without a way to let go of water too. The drain murmurs behind you like an old song. And so, you keep walking, back into the city that never truly sleeps. A place where even the darkness is carefully managed, channeled, and rinsed away. The night is deepening now, settling like a warm wool cloak over the rooftops and courtyards of ancient Rome. You walk slowly, guided not by street signs, those didn't exist yet, but by the gentle burble of water and the occasional torch, flickering on a villa wall. Somewhere a dog barks once, then decides it's not worth the energy. You're headed somewhere special now, somewhere gilded, private. You're going to see how the other half lived, the ones whose homes had columns, not walls made of mud and dreams. And there it is, a palatial estate perched just beyond the Palatine Hill. You wouldn't know it from the outside. Romans were oddly humble with exterior facades. But the inside is something else. You slip through an open gate and wander into a courtyard paved with intricate mosaics, dolphins leaping, gods reclining, and, amusingly, one panel of a man clearly regretting a bad oyster. But it's not the artwork that holds your attention. It's the sound, a trickle of water, soft and steady, coming from a small indoor fountain. It's not decorative, it's plumbing. You follow the sound and find it, an actual indoor toilet. Yes, the emperor had one. Of course he did. It's said that Domitian had several in his palace, each with water channels beneath, and pipes that flushed waste away with just a splash of poured water. A servant would refill the basins by hand. Talk about personalized service. This wasn't just comfort. It was status. Only the wealthiest homes had private latrines, private baths, private aqueduct lines even. Some of the pipes were silver, not lined with silver. Silver. Imagine using your inheritance to plumb a lavatory. Bold. You step into what might have been the emperor's private bathroom. It's oddly beautiful. Marble bench, bronze fittings, a niche for oil and cloth. The floor is warm from a hypocaust system humming quietly beneath, stoked by servants whose names you'll never know. There's even a window, with a view. Because who doesn't want to contemplate politics, poetry, and bowel movements all at once? And the plumbing here, it's astonishing. Pipes made of terracotta or lead snake discreetly beneath the floors and behind the walls. Water arrives from a cistern, flushed down by gravity or bucket. Waste flows out through angled channels, carefully calculated to prevent odor from seeping back in. And yes, you guessed it, historians still argue about the details. Were there traps like in modern plumbing? Did the Romans understand gas backflow? Did Nero really commission a toilet seat shaped like a swan? No one can agree, but one thing is certain, this wasn't just about convenience, it was politics. To control water was to control comfort, and to control comfort was to control loyalty. You don't rebel when your feet are warm, your toga is clean, and your backside is gently coddled by marble. And so the emperor's engineers made sure everything flowed smoothly. If a pipe broke, it was fixed within hours. If a sewer backed up, the slaves worked double time. No disruption, no filth, just calm, steady infrastructure humming like a heartbeat under silk. You wander through the villa, peeking into the balneum, the private bath. Smaller than the public ones, but no less impressive. Steam rising from the caldarium, cold water glistening in the frigidarium, tiles imported from Greece. There's even a small fountain shaped like a satyr spitting water into a shell basin. A reminder that even the grotesque can be part of the luxury. Nearby, a servant pours fresh water into a bronze basin. Another mops the floor with rose-scented oil. A third checks the temperature of the hypocaust vent with his bare hand and nods in approval. The emperor's backside shall not suffer lukewarm tiles tonight. And somewhere outside, a rustle of gossip flutters among the fig trees. There's a rumor going around that the emperor wants to install heated toilets. Someone claims they've seen the blueprints. Another says it's absurd. A third mutters, well, if anyone's backside deserves it. You pass through a library on your way out. Shelves of scrolls on medicine, architecture, water law. Romans took plumbing so seriously that they wrote treatises on it. One engineer even claimed that poorly placed toilets could lead to political instability. He may not have been wrong. Before you leave, you take one last look at the indoor latrine. It's not just a hole in the floor, it's a statement. A whisper from marble and mortar. Here, we have mastered even our mess. You step outside, back into the night. The villa stands quiet behind you, lit by stars and soft torchlight. Somewhere far below, the waste from that silver-lined toilet is already on its way through Rome's arteries, flowing discreetly, faithfully, and you too keep moving. Not on marble tiles now, but on stone streets that carry you ever onward through a city that has learned to make even water obey. You wander away from the glittering hush of the imperial villa and back toward the city's sleeping heart. Rome stretches around you like a living organism. Aqueducts as veins, sewers as intestines, fountains as breath. The city exhales through its plumbing. You start to wonder if it dreams and gurgles. Now you find yourself in a quieter neighborhood. Not poor, not wealthy, the in-between. Modest homes packed together, narrow streets winding like thoughts late at night. Laundry hangs between buildings, swaying slightly in the breeze. Somewhere, someone is roasting chickpeas. Somewhere else, someone is snoring like a lion trapped in a wine barrel. You step into a domus, a private home, small but tidy. There's a central courtyard with a little impluvium, a sunken basin that catches rainwater from the open roof above. This is the beating heart of the Roman home. Water from the heavens, caught and stored with care. You reach down to touch the water. It's cool, still, and faintly metallic. Rainwater was prized. It was gentle. It didn't smell like the aqueducts. It felt clean, purifying, like the sky itself had decided to wash your hands for you. But what catches your attention now isn't the basin. It's the low, covered channel running beneath the atrium tiles, leading toward the back of the house. You lift a tile, just slightly, and there it is. A private pipe, built from clay, leading to a latrina, a modest one-seater tucked away next to the kitchen. Yes, right next to the kitchen. Sanitary design was still a work in progress, and yet this was progress. Indoor plumbing in a middle-class Roman home. The pipe connects to a private cistern, or, in some cases, even the city sewer. It's rudimentary but functional. The owner doesn't need to trot off to the public latrine. He has his own. It's like winning the plumbing lottery. But even here, privilege has a cost. Water for flushing must be hauled manually. The cistern must be maintained. And if you think maintenance men in Rome had an easy time, just ask the guy who once had to unclog a drain using only a bronze ladle and a prayer. You open a storage cabinet and find jars of vinegar, herbs, even a spare sponge. The tersorium again. You chuckle softly. Romans may have invented engineering marvels, but they never figured out a better alternative to the world's weirdest cleaning utensil. Still, it worked. Sort of. And these homes, these modest domus with clay pipes and awkward latrines, were the testing ground for ideas that would eventually evolve into modern plumbing. Nothing flashy, just daily life made a bit easier by the gentle force of gravity. Outside, you hear a splash, someone emptying a chamber pot into the street. Not every home was so advanced. Some relied on the old method: throw, shout, and hope for good aim. You step aside instinctively. Rome had plumbing, but also puddles. You step around the corner and find a small insula, an apartment building, several stories high. These were the real Roman cities, stacked vertically. The ground floor held shops and bakeries. The middle floors housed working families, and the upper levels, well, those were a gamble. Less water, fewer windows, more stairs. The higher you lived, the closer you were to the gods and to dehydration. Some insulae had running water. A few had shared toilets, but most relied on the kindness of buckets and gravity, which meant chamber pots, lots of them, emptied out of windows into the streets below. You suddenly appreciate umbrellas more than you ever have in your life. And still, they tried. Some landlords installed rooftop cisterns to collect rainwater and distribute it downward using pipes. Others paid to connect their buildings to the nearest aqueduct. But leaks were common. Explosions, not unheard of. One unlucky poet once wrote about waking to find his mattress floating through his living room, and not in a romantic, gondola kind of way. Historians continue to argue about how widespread these home plumbing systems truly were. Some claim most insulae had nothing more than a bucket and a strong constitution. Others point to archaeological finds, pipes, drains, latrine, remains, as proof of plumbing trickling down to the lower classes. It depends where you dig, literally and figuratively. You step into a stairwell and climb a few steps. The building groans faintly, wood creaking, stone settling. You peek into a doorway. Inside, a family is asleep on straw mats, a single oil lamp flickering. In the corner, a small ceramic chamber pot waits for morning. It's not glamorous, but it's something. A little bit of control in a chaotic world. And as you descend the stairs again, back into the cooler air of the street, you realize something. For the Romans, plumbing wasn't just about water. It was about dignity. About saying, I will not be ruled by the mess of life. I will manage it, channel it, design around it, even if I have to use a sponge on a stick to do so. You smile at the thought. The Romans didn't invent the modern bathroom, but they made the first real attempt to tame it, to bring comfort out of chaos, to make water flow where they wanted it to go. Uphill, downhill, even into their living rooms if they had. The night deepens. You hear a fountain chuckling in the distance, and you follow once again, where the water leads. You're walking again, and now the stones beneath your feet feel colder, like they remember something, a secret, maybe even a mistake. Because tonight you're going to talk about something the Romans didn't quite get right. Leaders, yes, the same. Material we now associate with danger signs, bad pipes, and questionable paint in old apartments. But to the Romans, lead was magic. Malleable, cheap, nearly indestructible. They used it everywhere. In plumbing, coins, cosmetics, even curse tablets. If there was a problem, they tried solving it with lead, which, in hindsight, might explain a few things. You pass by a half-buried pipe jutting from a collapsed wall, dull, grey, streaked with centuries of mineral residue. It's lead, of course. Fistulae, they called them. These pipes connected everything. Aqueducts to fountains, cisterns to bathhouses, toilets to sewers. If water flowed in Rome, it probably touched lead. And here's where the story gets complicated. The Romans knew lead could be harmful. There are writings that mention lead sickness, especially among miners and water workers. Pliny the Elder even warned about the dangers of lead fumes. But did they stop using it in pipes? Of course not. It was too convenient. And besides, if the water tasted fine, what could possibly go wrong? You follow a trail of old piping along, the ground half exposed like the ribs of a sleeping giant. These pipes often came with stamps, names of officials, marks of ownership. Plumbing was status. The bigger your pipe, the more important you were. Yes, Roman ego extended all the way into the sewer. You pause beside a wall fountain, water trickling from the mouth of a lion carved from stone. It runs into a lead basin, darkened from age and use. You run your fingers along the rim. Smooth, cold, heavy. The water smells faintly metallic. It's clean, but is it safe? Modern historians still debate this. Did Roman lead pipes contribute to widespread lead poisoning? Some say yes, pointing to behavioral quirks in the ruling class, sudden deaths, infertility. Others argue no, the constant flow of water, combined with mineral buildup inside the pipes, may have formed a protective barrier, like aligning a bullet with cake frosting. Still deadly. Just slower. You continue down the street, thinking about emperors who drank from silver cups, bathed in heated pools, and never once questioned the materials that carried their water. Nero, Caligula, Commodus. Say what you want about their politics, but none of them were picky about plumbing materials. And then there's the question no one really wants to ask. Did the very thing that made Rome so advanced, its brilliant, elegant plumbing, help lead to its slow unraveling? Did the pipes poison the emperors? Did the villas slowly kill their inhabitants from within? Some scholars argue that lead, while present, wasn't the true culprit. That political corruption, overexpansion, economic strain, those were the real toxins. Others insist it was both, a perfect storm of arrogance and ignorance, Rome engineered the most sophisticated plumbing in the ancient world, and maybe didn't wash their hands enough afterward. You shake your head. It's oddly comforting, really. Even the greatest civilization on Earth made massive design decisions based on convenience over safety. Makes your neighbor's questionable backyard hot tub setup feel a little more forgivable. You turn a corner and spot a villa with decorative pipes still embedded in its walls. They sparkle slightly in the moonlight, remnants of pride and ambition. Pipes weren't hidden in Roman homes. They were displayed, celebrated. A working water system meant you were civilized, you were modern, you were Roman. But now they sit quiet, empty, like the skeleton of a forgotten god, once worshipped, now just there. You place your ear against the wall. Nothing. Just cold silence. But you imagine what it once sounded like. Water rushing, faucets dripping, children splashing, someone yelling that the caldarium was too hot again. You sigh. The lead didn't kill Rome in a single day. It was slower than that, more subtle, like a pipe with a tiny leak no one notices until the ceiling caves in. The tragedy of Rome wasn't just that it fell, it's that it kept running, right up until it didn't. You walk on, past villas and shadows, past long-dead fountains and forgotten statues. Somewhere ahead, a public fountain still flows. You can hear it calling. The water, even now, still trying to move, still obeying the channels carved by those long gone. And though the lead lies quiet, sealed in history, the lesson remains clear. Even genius, left unchecked, can rust from the inside. The sound of flowing water draws you forward again. Not a roar, just a quiet, persistent trickle, like someone whispering in a language you almost understand. You find yourself in a shaded plaza. In the center, a large fountain gurgles peacefully beneath the flickering torchlight. Marble figures stand mid-pose. Neptune with his trident, a sea nymph cradling a fish, and a very dramatic dolphin who looks like he's seen things. The water arcs gracefully into a basin below, splashing softly. It's beautiful, serene. But make no mistake, this isn't just art, it's infrastructure. These were sacred fountains, part of daily life and divine ritual. To you, it might seem like a fancy decoration. To a Roman, it was drinking water, status symbol, and temple offering all in one. A woman kneels at the edge of the basin, filling a clay jug. She murmurs a short prayer as she works, maybe to Neptune, maybe to Cloaca, maybe just to the pipe gods that make water show up on time. The water she draws comes from miles away, via aqueducts that snake across the hills, through stone channels and underground tunnels guided by gradients so precise that modern engineers still raise their eyebrows. One aqueduct dropped only a few inches every 100 feet. Gravity, mastered like a pet. You walk to the edge of the basin and dip your fingers in. The water is cool, pure, tinged with minerals and mystery. It tastes faintly of limestone and empire. This is live water, always moving, always sacred, always watched. And oh yes, Rome watched its water very closely. There were laws governing who could tap into it, how much they could use, and for what purposes. Water theft? Illegal. Diverting. Flow for private baths. Frowned upon unless you were very rich or very persuasive. There were even water inspectors, curatores aquarum, whose entire job was to manage the aqueducts, inspect public fountains, and scowl disapprovingly at anyone using the lion-headed spigot to bathe their goat. You glance at the base of the fountain and notice a bronze plaque, a dedication from a magistrate who paid for the fountain's restoration. It was common for wealthy citizens to sponsor public works as a show of generosity or guilt. Nothing says, Please forget I overtaxed your grain, like clean drinking water and a statue of Hercules posing over it. Behind the fountain is a shallow trough lined with marble. You realize it's for washing hands. A communal sink. People come, rinse, gossip, and move on. The fountain isn't just a water source, it's a social hub, the heart of a neighborhood. You sit for a moment. On a nearby bench watching, an older man fills a bucket, muttering about how the water was colder in his youth. A boy splashes his friend and gets scolded by a vendor. A woman pours a small libation, wine, just a few drops, into the basin before taking a sip herself. Because this, too, was common. The mixing of ritual and routine. Water wasn't just physical, it was spiritual. Offerings were poured into fountains. Coins were tossed with wishes. The gods of water were fickle and powerful, and no Roman wanted to be caught ungrateful, and the fountains in turn were designed to remind you of that. Their designs weren't arbitrary. The gods carved into them weren't just for show. You didn't just take water, you received it with reverence, with awareness. Even if you were running late for market and had 3 squawking chickens under your arm. The scholars, of course, debate how much the average Roman believed in all this. Was it real piety or just habit? But does it matter? The rituals were there. The fountains were cleaned, the statues scrubbed, the water flowed, and the people obeyed. Not just gravity, but tradition. You notice something curious as you stand. A smaller spout set lower to the ground. For children maybe, or the elderly, or even animals. Roman fountains were often designed to be inclusive. One spout for drinking, one for washing, one for filling buckets, one for livestock. Everyone got their drop. It's a small detail, but it's beautiful, thoughtful, and maybe a bit melancholy, because you know that someday the flow will stop. The aqueducts will crumble. The pipes will silence. The gods will be forgotten, or renamed and repurposed. But tonight, the water still sings. As you leave the plaza, you pass under a marble arch where ivy creeps along the edge. Above it is another Latin inscription, weather-worn, but proud. It reads, Aqua vitae, lux civitatis. Water is life, the light of the city. You believe it. You've walked the pipes. You've heard the fountains. You've watched a civilization define itself through where it let water go and where it let water stay. And as you turn the corner and the fountain fades into the hush of distant footsteps, you feel the heartbeat of Rome still pulsing beneath the streets. A trickle, a murmur, a prayer made of stone and stream. You follow the curve of the street as it slopes gently downward. The stones beneath your sandals now slick from use, polished by centuries of footsteps and splashes. Rome, like its water, always flows, downhill, uphill, around temples and under thresholds. You're beginning to sense that everything here has been touched by water. Even dirt feels cleaner somehow. You approach a narrow alleyway, where the hum of quiet voices grows louder. It leads to a public square, modest but busy even this late, at night. At its edge stands a rectangular stone structure with low walls and a drainage trench running beside it. It's not ornate, no marble, no Neptune statues, just function. You've arrived at a laundry fountain. A group of women kneel beside the stone basin, sleeves rolled up, hands deep in water that swirls with suds made from wood ash and goat fat. They scrub tunics against flat stones, beat them gently, then rinse them in a separate channel of cleaner water. There's laughter, jokes, the occasional exaggerated eye roll. This too is plumbing. Not the glamorous kind, not the whispered of in Senate kind, but the essential, everyday kind that kept the tunics white. Ish. The togas respectable, and the city from reeking of unwashed ambition. You lean against the wall, watching. No one pays you much mind. Laundry, after all, is universal. One woman hums a tune as she wrings out a garment with practiced grace. Another sharpens a stick to hang it. Nearby, a younger girl carries a bucket from the main fountain, carefully balancing it like it's filled with perfume. The water used here comes from one of the lower pressure lines, diverted from a public aqueduct. The Romans were remarkably strategic about pressure. Fountains got one type, baths another. Latrines and laundries were typically last in line, receiving the leftover flow. But even the leftovers were reliable. You overhear one woman mutter something about a stingy landlord who promised more pressure this week. Another snorts, "Maybe if we pray to the pipe gods harder." They laugh, and you get the sense that even plumbing had politics, especially when it involved soap. And soap, by the way, wasn't quite what you'd expect. Romans didn't have bars of lavender-scented, artisan soaps with exfoliating apricot seeds. They used lye, sometimes mixed with sand or crushed bone for scrubbing power. Effective, yes. Gentle? Not exactly. But it got the wine stains out. One of the women catches you watching and waves you closer. She gestures to the drain beneath her. Station. You peek in. The rinse water flows down a narrow channel carved centuries ago. It leads to a larger system beneath the street, part of Rome's vast network of wastewater management. Because Rome didn't just bring water in, it took water away. Dirty water, soapy water, used up water. Gravity helped, but so did clever engineering. The city sloped ever so slightly toward the Tiber. The sewers, fountains, and gutters all knew this, even if they never said it out loud. And so this drain, unassuming as it looks, is part of a system that stretches across the city. And back through time, you imagine the first stone laid, the first bucket poured, the first complaint about pressure. It all began somewhere. And now, here it is, still working. You hear someone nearby mention the full owns, the professional Roman laundrymen and women who ran full-scale laundries complete with urine collection jars. Yes, you heard that right. Urine. It was prized for its ammonia content. Public urinals were often placed near laundries to collect this golden detergent. One emperor even taxed it. A boy passing by drops a small coin into a collection jar with a sign scrawled in Latin. For clean tunics, donate your best. His father pats his head. You laugh, because there's something strangely heartwarming about a civilization that literally taxed pee and made it work. Of course, some historians argue that all this washing didn't make people cleaner, that hygiene was more symbolic than medical. But you know better. You've seen the women's hands, red, raw, worked. You've smelled the soap, watched the water darken, then clear again. This is labor. This is care. You turn your attention back to the fountain's gentle trickle. It sounds like a lullaby now. Even the splashes feel rhythmic, like the city is rocking itself to sleep. One woman wrings out her last tunic and holds it up to the moonlight. She smiles faintly, satisfied. Another yawns, stretches, and starts to gather her things. The square begins to quiet, the buckets now empty, the troughs slowly draining. The water returns to the city's veins, and the people return to their homes. You step away as the lanterns are snuffed out, one by one. And once again, the water flows on, unfazed, tireless. A quiet servant of the empire, making everything cleaner, even the parts no one likes to talk about. And as you leave the square, you carry with you the scent of lye, the soft song of rinsing hands, and the gentle understanding that sometimes civilization rests not on gold or marble, but on soap, sweat, and a well-placed drain. You drift through the emptying square, the slap of your sandals now softer, as if the stones themselves have decided to hush. Rome is quieter here, near midnight. The crowds have faded, the fountains still flow, but their sound is less lively, now more like a murmur, like someone remembering. Your feet take you downward again, as they always do in this city where water and gravity are old conspirators. You're drawn to the darkest part of Rome's underbelly, its myths, its monsters, its plumbing ghosts. The sewers, not the clean, curated kind that passed under villas and forums. No, this is the murky maze of tunnels few dared enter. The parts that creaked and groaned and breathed when no one was watching. You reach a grate in the street, iron, ancient, slick with dew. Beneath it, water trickling. But not just water. Whispers. There were rumors, you know. The ancients spoke of spirits dwelling in the sewers, manes of the dead, larvae who weren't properly buried, shadows who clung to the damp walls and watched the runoff with glowing eyes. You peer down and think, just for a second you see, movement. Probably a rat. Probably. The Romans, ever practical, didn't dismiss these stories. They built shrines to sewer spirits. Cloacina, goddess of the Great Drain, had a little round temple near the forum. Her name, from cloaca, means sewer. Not the most glamorous origin story, but she was honored nonetheless. Offerings were left, prayers whispered. You never mocked the things that carried your waste away. You move farther down the street and come to an archway partially swallowed by moss and thyme. It's an entrance to a side channel of the Cloaca Maxima. Most passers-by ignore it, but you step closer. Your breath fogs slightly, though the night is warm. You imagine torches flickering inside, workers with tunics tied at the knees, crawling through knee-deep filth to unblock a pipe. They had no modern tools, just their hands, hooks, maybe a bronze spade. If something got stuck, a child's toy, a piece of jewelry, a half-finished love letter, it might stay down there forever, drifting along the dark corridor like a forgotten thought. And yet, this sewer saved lives. Rome's population, at its height, approached 1 million. Without proper drainage, the city would have drowned in itself. Disease, flooding, filth. The Cloaca Maxima and her many tributaries kept the city breathable, livable. They made civilization possible, and not with glory, with grime. A soft sound interrupts your thoughts. A splash. Not loud, just enough to remind you you're not alone. You freeze, heart ticking a little faster. They say on certain nights, when the moon is high and the water flows just right, you can hear the chanting of old sewer workers, or the sobs of a priest who lost his ring during a ritual cleansing, or the footsteps of someone who went down to clear a blockage and never came back up. You smile. Probably nonsense. But still, you take a step back. Historians don't agree on how the sewer workforce operated. Some claim there was a dedicated guild. Others believe it was simply slaves, pressed into service when things backed up. But a few documents hint at a class of specialists, engineers of excrement, if you will. Men who mapped the tunnels, knew every bend, every blockage, every echo. They were rarely praised, their names lost. But without them, the temples would have stunk, the baths would have backed up, and the emperors wouldn't have had their marble thrones with the flowing flush. You sit now on the edge of the stone platform above the grate, your feet dangling just above the trickling water. The night air carries a smell, not foul, not pleasant, just old. It smells like Rome's past, like old scrolls and forgotten gods and too many olives. You hear another splash, and this time, you don't look. Instead, you listen. Not just to, the water, but to what it carries. Ashes from a burned-out kitchen fire. Wine from a goblet knocked over in laughter. Tears, maybe, from a slave girl who washed her face in secret before dawn. The cloaca took it all. Joy, dirt, secrets, and kept moving. That was its job. That was its gift. You stand and brush dust from your tunic. The sewer hums behind you, not loudly, just enough to remind you that even now, below your feet, a river of history runs silent and true. And so you leave it be, as the Romans did, with respect, with superstition, with a quiet thanks, because even the darkest tunnels deserve a little light. You turn from the grate and begin walking again, back into the city, where water still flows in pipes and people still sleep with the sound of fountains whispering them into dreams. The alley gives way to a wider road, one lined with the glow of occasional torches and the gentle flicker of lamps perched above doorways. The moon sits high now, round, watchful, casting a silver sheen over tiled rooftops and broken statues. You're no longer in the heart of the city. You're moving toward its edges, toward the outposts where Roman influence brushed up against foreign soil. It's quieter here. The chatter of marketplaces and splashes of bathhouses are replaced by rustling olive branches and the creak of cartwheels in the distance. And yet, even here, you find it. Plumbing. Because tonight, you're leaving Rome proper. You're traveling in the mind's eye to the provinces, where aqueducts still arched across distant lands, and toilets still flushed with imperial pride. You pass a milestone etched with Latin. Miles from the Forum, and before you stands a small Roman settlement, perhaps in Gaul, or Britannia, or maybe somewhere along the coast of Syria. It doesn't matter exactly where. What matters is that even this far-flung place, this dusty outpost with a single amphitheater and 2 donkeys, is connected to the great idea of water control. You step into a bathhouse, not grand but functional. The floor is worn, the tiles chipped, but the water still flows. A thin pipe drips steadily into a basin. 2 locals wrapped in rough wool tunics discuss taxes and a recent shipment of amphorae. One of them pauses to adjust the wooden plug that controls the inflow. It's not fancy, but it works. And that's the point. Rome exported many things: roads, law, conquest, amphitheaters. But perhaps nothing more quietly revolutionary than indoor plumbing. Wherever the legions marched, eventually a bathhouse followed, a latrine, a fountain. These weren't luxuries. They were statements. You are in Rome now, even if you're not. You wander into a modest villa. It has a clay pipe running from a rooftop cistern, feeding a tiny indoor basin. You smile at the ingenuity. Rainwater, funneled down, caught, stored. It's not aqueduct water, but it's local, clean enough, and free of charge. This was how Romans adapted. A grand system in the capital, a clever trick in the provinces. You step into a latrine built alongside the Forum Square. It's humbler than those in Rome. Only 3 seats, 1 drain, and a single tersorium, but it functions. A narrow channel flushes waste into a shallow underground pipe that leads, eventually, to a river. And here's where things get creative. In some places, the infrastructure was built before the aqueducts arrived, so people got inventive. They diverted mountain streams, dug wells, harvested dew. One settlement even used camel bladder pressure pumps. You imagine the engineers explaining that to an official in Rome. Yes, we have indoor plumbing, powered by livestock. The scholars still debate how consistent these systems were. Some claim Romanization brought standardized plumbing to every corner. Others argue it depended on the governor's priorities, and How many bribes the local aqueduct inspector received? Records are scarce, but ruins speak. And you've seen them. Broken basins, cracked pipes, sewer outlets still faintly stained by time. Even here, in a backwater post of empire, water mattered. It was identity. A Roman could walk into a strange land, see a flowing fountain, and feel at home. The plumbing was a tether, a whisper from the center of the world. You're still one of us. You pause near a dry fountain, its lion head chipped, its bowl cracked. No water flows now, but you can imagine it. The gurgle, the splash, the priestess washing her hands before, a minor ritual. The child sipping carefully before running off to chase lizards in the dust. A breeze picks up, carrying the scent of dry earth and rosemary. Somewhere, an owl hoots. The provinces don't have the grandeur of Rome, but they have the echoes, the patterns, the intention. You'd leave the fountain and walk the narrow road back toward your imagined city center. You pass a stone with a carved outline of a foot pointing left. A local marker. It reads, "To the baths, 1 mile." You smile. Even far from home, Rome kept you clean, warm, and vaguely aware of your civic duties. And even now, with no water running, no voices echoing in tiled halls, you feel it. The empire didn't just conquer land, it conquered flow. And flow, once begun, is hard to stop. The stars shift overhead as you walk back into the shadows of the city, where the smell of baked bricks and old olive wood lingers in the cracks between buildings. Rome's heartbeat is slower now, but it hasn't stopped, not really. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once, a door creaks, water moves. Always. You follow a side street until the pavement changes beneath your feet. It dips subtly. The air grows heavy, damp. A faint squish underfoot lets you know you've entered a low quarter, a place where plumbing didn't always work. Because yes, even in mighty Rome, the pipes sometimes failed. Ahead, a man is yelling, not angrily, just loudly, because that's how plumbing complaints have always been filed. His words bounce off the walls, something about a blocked drain and a merchant who promised the repairs last Saturnalia. You don't need to understand every word. You understand the tone. You round the corner and see it. A street slick with standing water. Not much, just a shallow flood that's begun to glisten under moonlight like a mirror made of bad decisions. Bits of straw float lazily across the surface. A broken amphora rolls toward a gutter like it's trying to escape. Rome, for all its ingenuity, was not immune to infrastructure hiccups. Pipes cracked, cisterns leaked, sewers clogged, usually at the worst possible time. A famous story tells of a public bath that backed up so badly during a festival, the caldarium turned into what scholars politely refer to as a warm broth of collective shame. You hear more shouting now, a young man waving a shovel, gesturing toward a pile of debris that's clearly the culprit. Rotten vegetables, rags, a chicken bone or 12, all wedged right where a drainage grate used to be. The local solution? Remove your sandals, roll up your tunic, and get to work. You watch as a group gathers, neighbors, vendors, one man still wearing his cooking apron. No one's thrilled, but there's a rhythm to it, a familiarity. You realize, this isn't a damn failure. Not really, this is maintenance, collective, involuntary, slightly soggy, but community nonetheless. Someone passes a bucket. Another lights a torch to see into the drain. The water begins to move again, slow at first, then with growing confidence. It finds its course. It always does. You imagine this scene played out 1,000 times. In 1,000 streets, Rome wasn't just marble forums and aqueducts. It was puddles, It was clogs. It was children learning to jump over sewage streams like it was a citywide game. Historians still argue whether Rome's plumbing system was over-engineered or underfunded. Some say it was too complex to maintain without slaves. Others claim it ran too efficiently, creating complacency. And then there are those who believe the true flaw wasn't in the pipes, but in people who thought clean water meant the city would run itself. You watch as the young man with the shovel finally unplugs the last bit of muck. The water rushes forward in a sudden whoosh, swirling away down the street, leaving behind a wet trail and a sigh of relief. Someone claps. Someone else cheers. Someone slips and lands squarely in the remaining puddle. A moment later, they're all laughing. You step aside as the flow winds around your feet, carrying away leaves, crumbs, the final drops of inconvenience, a little parade of relief. And yet, even in this scene of minor disaster, there's something enduring. The pipes worked again. The system moved again. Rome bent, but didn't break. You step into a nearby courtyard where someone has placed a small ceramic statue of a river god beside a drain pipe. A little votive candle flickers beside it. Maybe it's for luck. Maybe it's for gratitude. Or maybe it's just habit. You don't question it. Above you, rain begins to whisper against the rooftops. Light, but steady. You look up, half expecting to see water cascading from gutter spouts carved into lions' heads. And yes, there it is. A thin stream emerging from one corner, arcing beautifully into the street like a silver ribbon. You wonder how many storms this city has weathered. How many floods, how many nights just like this one, with citizens out, in the dark, managing chaos with buckets and jokes. Rome, you realize, wasn't defined by perfection. It was defined by resilience, the knowledge that things break, that people complain, that drains clog, and that, eventually, someone gets a shovel. You leave the low quarter behind, the smell of fresh rain now mingling with wet stone and distant basil. The water rushes beside you, newly liberated, singing softly as it seeks the Tiber once more. The storm might grow, but the system holds. The rain quickens, a soft patter turning into a more determined rhythm. It falls across rooftops, washes the dust from statues, and seeps into every corner of the city. But Rome doesn't panic. Rome knows rain. It's seen worse. Floods, fires, emperors with building obsessions, and zero architectural training. You pull your cloak a little tighter and follow the water, not just where it pools, but where it goes after. Tonight, you're heading toward the end of the line, the edge of Rome, the point where all that water, poured, flushed, spilled, blessed, or forgotten, must go. Because no matter how elegant the aqueducts or how sacred the fountains, everything eventually flows down and out. To the Tiber. You hear it before you see it. A low roar, distant but constant, like a massive beast gently clearing its throat. You step onto the worn flagstones of a broad platform. Before you, the river unfolds in the moonlight, wide, muddy, and utterly unimpressed by empires. The Cloaca Maxima opens near here, its flow merging with the great current like a whispered confession to something much older. There's a certain peace to it. Finality. A worker stands nearby with a hooked pole, poking at debris where the sewer meets the river. He hums quietly, a tune you don't recognize, probably one passed down through generations of people whose job it was to make sure the mess of the city reached its appointed exit. You nod to him. He nods back, but keeps working. No one romanticizes this part of the system, but they should. This is where Rome breathes out. The water that has touched every level of the city, emperors, paupers, priests, bakers, now blends into one muddy ribbon and disappears downstream, the Tiber is more than a river. It's memory, circulation, the city's subconscious. You walk along the riverbank, past boat docks and warehouses. A low wall here has been painted with warnings. Do not drink. Keep goats out. And more recently, graffiti, someone's version of a god with a pipe wrench. Possibly Vulcan. Possibly Steve. You pause at a spot where the outflow emerges in full. A tunnel of dark stone belches out water, foamy, gritty, full of sediment and secrets. For a moment, you can almost hear it whispering. The bathhouse arguments, the shared sponges, the laundry songs, the curses mumbled over overflowing drains. It all ends here. And this part of the system, it's ancient. The Cloaca Maxima has been redirecting Rome's filth since the time of the kings. Before the Republic, before Caesar, before indoor plumbing was even a dream. It's been cleaned, rebuilt, reinforced, but never fully replaced. It's older than some gods, and perhaps more consistent. Historians still debate how effective the final drainage was. Some claim it overflowed constantly during rainy seasons. Others argue that it was so brilliantly angled that even modern engineers study it. They all agree on one thing, though. It was ahead of its time, possibly ahead of our time. You sit on the edge of a stone embankment and watch the water move. The current is steady, as if pulled by purpose rather than gravity. And maybe it is. Maybe all of Rome at its heart was just a machine for moving water, bringing it in, using it, and sending it away without ceremony. And yet, there was ceremony. You remember the rituals, the offerings, the whispered thanks. Because even waste, when handled with grace, becomes something sacred. You close your eyes for a moment. You imagine the engineers who stood here centuries ago, measuring flow rates with copper cups and gut instinct. The priest who blessed the water. The laborer who unclogged the outlet during a thunderstorm and was paid with a dry tunic and leftover wine. Rome didn't hide its mess. It engineered around it, accepted it, beautified it, and always, always let it flow onward. You open your eyes to the river one last time. It's moving still, and now so are you. Back toward the city, back toward the whispered gurgle of fountains and the faint scent of warm stone and soap. Back into the belly of a city that once ruled the world and still knows exactly where its water goes. You step away from the Tiber, leaving behind the murmuring outlet where Rome quietly disposes of its secrets. The city feels different now, emptier somehow, as if, after all the baths and fountains and sacred drains, there's little more to uncover. But Rome always has one more room, one more corridor, one more trickle in the darkness. You find yourself returning, almost without meaning to the Forum Romanum. Not the grand daytime version with orators and crowds and marble gleaming in the sun. No, this is the after-hours forum, cloaked in shadow, moonlight glinting off puddles gathered in the low spots between stones. The buildings here loom like hushed monuments. The Temple of Saturn, the Basilica Julia, the Arch of Septimius Severus, names, heavy with history. Their foundations holding more than just political ambition. Somewhere below it all, water still moves. You wander toward a forgotten corner where the remains of a small shrine still stand. Sacrum Cloacanae, the sacred shrine of Cloacina, goddess of the sewers. It's a simple circle of stone, barely raised off the ground, often overlooked. But you know better now? You step closer. A thin vine curls around the base. Rain has pooled in the groove of the old inscription. There's no priest here, no candles, just silence, broken by the quiet trickle of runoff water making its way beneath the forum. You sit beside it, cross-legged on damp stone, and think about all you've seen. The aqueducts towering over the hills, carrying the lifeblood of the empire. The bathhouses filled with voices and steam and the gentle slosh of ritual cleansing. The public latrines, where conversations flowed just as steadily as the drains. The villas with their silver-lined pipes and quiet indoor elegance. The back alley floods, the clogged gutters, the moments when the whole system faltered, and still, someone got up and fixed it. And now, here, a shrine to the one who ruled it all from below. Because Rome didn't just master water, it respected it, feared it, worshipped it. You lie back on the stone and let the chill seep through your clothes. Above you, the stars wheel slowly across the sky. You can still hear it beneath the quiet, the hum of water flowing through hidden channels. Like breath beneath ribs, historians may never agree on when Roman plumbing began, or how much lead poisoning mattered, or whether the Cloaca Maxima was divine or just impressively durable. But you've walked it now. You've felt it. Rome flowed. Through pipes and prayers, through gods and gutters, through emperors, engineers, and everyone in between. You close your eyes. The marble is cold beneath your fingers, but the sound of water is warm, familiar, eternal. Now slow your breathing. Let the city fade behind your eyelids. The stone, the steam, the gentle splash echoing through underground halls. The whisper of fountains at midnight. The faint rhythm of a pipe somewhere, dripping patiently. You are drifting now. Down a gentle channel carved in time, past statues with soft smiles, past candles guttering in forgotten shrines, past voices long gone, still echoing beneath stone arches. Let it carry you. You're safe. Just one more drop in the aqueduct of history. End of script. Sweet dreams.